Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Current Status. I'm Phoummala Schmitt, one of your co-hosts. You can also find me on Twitter as @ExchangeGoddess. And tonight is, I guess, it is a special episode. It's our first that we've had in a couple weeks, and it's Christmas. And as you can tell, I've got my Christmas tree. It's our second annual Christmas tree show. I guess we'll take it off and introduce my co-host.
Hi everyone, it's Theresa Miller. You can find me on Twitter at 24/7 IT Connect. And I would agree it's a very special evening. Yes, we have the holidays coming, and we also have a great guest with us this evening. We have Michel de Rooij joining us. He's an Exchange MVP. Michel, if you could talk to us a little bit more about yourself, and then we can get started with our topic this evening.
Okay, Theresa. My name is Michel de Rooij. I'm an exchange consultant from the Netherlands. I work for a company called Conclusion Fit, and I do exchange stuff, of course. And next to that, I also do a lot of Powershell coding to support exchange-related projects. In a nutshell, you can find me on Twitter on mderooij.
We have to let everybody know.
So I didn't pronounce your last name correctly. I'm sorry.
The Rooij is close enough.
I pronounced it very American.
I'm
used to that, so.
And we should probably let our guests. we should probably let our guests know that it is 4:30 in the morning for Michel, so he's probably still kind of groggy, but we absolutely appreciate him joining us at such an early morning.
Well, I had to choose between staying up or getting up early, so I choose to stay up late. But
isn't that typical though for exchange admin? Do we ever sleep?
Sometimes.
We don't sleep.
Yeah, we sleep.
I actually have work to do this evening yet when we're done, so it's always exchange.
I actually just literally before the show, I was actually at the Razor Technology holiday Christmas party, and I kept telling her, but I have to get home. I got my show to do, and I got home at 10:14 p.m. just in time for the show. So yeah, we were cutting it pretty close there. Oh.
All right. So this evening we are talking about exchange.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about exchange automation. And Michel is an expert in this space in terms of automating using PowerShell. And so we're very excited to talk about your experiences. So with that, I guess what would be your favorite thing to talk about in the automation space, like business benefits possibly?
Well, no business benefits particularly. What I mostly do is developing scripts, tools to support projects. That could be migration projects or things like rebranding or consolidation or disentanglement kind of projects. So it's not always solely exchange related. It could also be AD related. Sometimes LinkedIn is involved. And nowadays it's also with a move to Office 365, of course. So.
I have a question. So with PowerShell, do you find that some customers, they find PowerShell scripts a little intimidating? I mean, it is scripting in a way. I don't find it intimidating at all, but I think there are some technicians, engineers that are so used to a graphical interface that writing PowerShell scripts may be somewhat intimidating, and so they may kind of shy away from it. I mean, do you see that in your consulting space?
Yeah. Some admins, mostly those with a little experience in the Linux world, are not resistant to use the shell. But yeah, there are some Exchange admins out there who expect some sort of interface, and if it's a command with a, for example, a single parameter, they would prefer to see a GUI with only a single field of entry and a button which says go, and that's how they are uh, uh, expect to do things or used to do things.
So do you find yourself as a consultant writing more of those scripts for your customers, or your customers writing the scripts for themselves? Because I know my space, I try to encourage my engineers to write a lot of their scripts unless it's already been written somewhere in some repository. You know, why recreate the wheel? If it's already been out there, just modify it somewhat and you know, try to make it work for our environment.
Nowadays, the number of repositories for those kind of scripts, for example, the text gallery, is a very good source to start your search when you're looking for a script to perform a certain task. But it's not necessarily bad if people try to make things up themselves, because they get lots of hands-on experience, and that's always better than just copy and pasting stuff from the internet, trying to understand what's going on behind the screens, and then sometimes they have no clue and just run it, and then they end up sending me a mail or somebody else a mail because it doesn't run in their environment. And admins are now more or less expected to have some sort of programming skill, if you want to call it. They're expected to be able to read that stuff, and it used to be a little bit difficult, but after, I think it's now 10 years of Exchange running on PowerShell, you would expect that admins are now more used to that kind of stuff, and it's coming, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, I actually was at a conference recently, and it really surprised me how few people haven't adopted the whole PowerShell methodology. I feel like in Exchange you really have to, but outside of that space, there's still been a lot of resistance. Phoummala, I found your comment interesting as well, in that even your Exchange admins aren't doing as much as they probably should be. I feel like sometimes using Shell, I get better feedback. Like a lot of the time, you know, if it's something that takes a little while, the console itself doesn't, you know, it just kind of sits there with a progress bar that isn't giving a lot of feedback. And Shell does provide that. It, you know, if something takes a little while, you really can tell. So I like that about using the Exchange Management Shell.
I think it's quicker. Everything just
It
so
can
much
be.
quicker.
It can be.
Yeah, I
It
understand
can be.
pictures, but it just everything just runs quicker and faster with Shell. The GUI, I'm sorry, Microsoft, but the GUI is just a pain in the ass. It's slow.
Like I said, it lacks the feedback too.
And I have no patience. Like I just want things to run, and to have it go through the GUI, I don't have the patience for it. So I was forced to learn Shell, and that's pretty much all I use now. It's just so much quicker. So I love it, but I do see some admins that fear it. I'm like, don't fear it. Just roll with it. Love it. Embrace it. It'll make your life so much easier.
Yeah, not only in the Exchange space, but also in the AD space, Office 365, all the other products that embrace the PowerShell as a management platform, if you want to call it like that. You cannot ignore it.
I agree. Yeah, I don't think you can ignore it. I think it's necessary. So, are you finding that there are any specific items with your customers that they automate a lot of? Like, do you like let's talk about monitoring, for example. Do they rely on third-party tools, or are they creating their own PowerShell scripts to monitor their Exchange environments?
We have quite a few customers that still use System Center for management monitoring. But yeah, admins for their daily job, like collecting statistics and stuff, they tend to develop quite a few reporting kind of scripts that they schedule, and that sends them their daily information in the morning when they start up their system and see what the status is of everything and go from there. So it's more in the reporting where there's a lot of customization and custom reporting going on, and things like backup jobs that they run correctly. So it's yeah, more in that area. Deadly silence.
It's
Sorry.
well, it's Theresa's internet. We pray every Thursday for her internet. We make sure the internet gods are happy and do not cut her internet line. So, but as you can tell, we have no video feed, right? It's just audio.
Yeah, that was
I know.
also last time,
I shut off my video. When my audio quality degrades when my video's on, I'll shut my video off. So, from an automation perspective, one of the things that I like using it for is auditing. Your auditing aspect of Exchange is done per mailbox, and I know you can kind of build that. You could build that into the user creation process, but you still need to go back and, if you haven't done it right away, enabling auditing for each mailbox in the organization from the past can really easily be scripted. So that's one of my favorites. Do you have any favorites, Michel?
Yeah, for some reason I always end up with that commandlet extension agent stuff. I don't know if you're referring to that one. But there are some lesser explored features in the product itself, like those commandlet extension agents, which support the provisioning process, and once you correct attributes or the auditing settings, you can make sure that it's always set the way you want it to. That also goes for other things like enforcing naming schemes, stuff like that, or influencing the provisioning of mailboxes, automatically enabling archives on specific databases depending on where the mailbox is going to be located. Yeah.
How do you deal with
That's
exceptions? True. When there's automation, sometimes you always have a little bit of exceptions, especially when you have to, let's say, create dynamic distribution lists. Although archiving, do you find that exceptions tend to complicate some of your scripts a little bit?
Yeah, that's the same with the language. These are the rules, and the exceptions is to
Do you allow a lot of exceptions? Like, I know for me, if there's an exception, I mean, I'll be honest, I tend to shy away from them. I know from a standard standpoint, I try to keep everything very standardized. It just makes it so much easier and more streamlined. If I have to make an exception for a script, I shy away from it. I'll tell people, well, this is really complicated. And it's mostly for selfish reasons, because if I have to make exceptions on my scripts, it complicates things a little bit more, especially if I get hit by a bus. And you know, someone's got to pick it up. They got to figure out why I made these exceptions. I'm just not sure if other engineers are thinking the same thing I am, or do they, you know, or they're putting those exceptions in, and you know, and I guess hashing them out and saying why they have the exceptions. Because sometimes you can have exceptions and end up with like a whole list of exceptions. And what's the point of having, you know, some automation if everything has an exception out?
Yeah. Well, then there's no point in putting in those exceptions in the script if only.
Well, what's the point of scripting, right?
Yeah. The scripting is intended to do bulk operations or automate certain procedures, and not to manage individual settings or exceptions, like you called it.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, you really almost. First of all, I think the size of the organization is a factor there. Your scripts to provision user accounts that you mentioned, I think, you know, in a smaller organization might be easier to create more uniformity. When you get larger organizations and there are lots of different groups and lots of different roles, it could become harder, and that exception list would grow greater. Sometimes you can also automate just the basics of that user account, and then follow up down the road, or not down the road, but after the account is built, and then manage the exceptions there. But exceptions are a challenge. That was a really good point, Phoummala.
I hate exceptions. I'm gonna be honest. I just
Yeah.
hate them.
Yeah.
I'm an open book today. I hate exceptions. And maybe because I had to deal with some this morning. I want a dynamic distribution list, but I need 500 exceptions. Really?
Yeah, I don't think anybody really enjoys them. And like you said too, if something happens, you get hit by a bus, who knows, right? Now that exception is lost with you, and some admin is gonna find it 2 years down the road, and
they're gonna curse me.
They're probably not gonna be very happy about it. Yeah, they're not gonna be happy about it.
Oh no, they won't be. They'll curse me. Why'd she put the exception in? Because I'm cursing some of the admins that were before me. I'm like, what the hell did you do this for? And I'm sure there was a particular reason why they did it. But again, it was an exception. And if you want to have standards, I feel that what's the point of having standardization if you've got 500 exceptions? It's like, what's the point of a firewall if your firewall looks like Swiss cheese and there's holes everywhere?
Right.
You might as well just throw away the firewall then if you're going to have a hole every inch. Every other port is open. I mean, there's no point to having a firewall then. Just like automating scripts and automating, creating accounts. What's the point if everything's an exception?
Yeah, good point.
Sorry for one of my tangent there.
It's all good.
It's been an interesting night, so it's a tangent night.
So there's so this last week in the news, one of the things that stood out to me. So I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent too, semi-related, but so it was December 2nd or 3rd. There was an Azure outage that affected Office 365 for at least 6 hours, and I just I find it interesting that businesses can tolerate those types of outages. What are your thoughts on that?
Have you followed the Twitter stream this afternoon, Theresa? Because there were issues again in certain regions.
I thought, I did think I saw that. Yeah.
Really, I have to admit, I have not been on Twitter very much, so I have not followed the outage today. I've been, neck deep in Skype for Business issues. So there was another outage. That's a shame. And as Theresa's point,
this one was shorter.
Yeah. what businesses can actually tolerate an outage of that long? I know the business I'm in, we cannot tolerate an outage that long. I'd be screaming at somebody's ass, going, fix
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I would be
Yeah.
screaming at somebody's ass. Fix it. And they would just laugh
I
at
know,
me, going,
and
we're Office 365.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the benefit of joining the whole cloud movement, is that you're just one of the tenants, and your downtime numbers just go up in the mass and negligible. Um, but yeah, I do see customers who also cannot tolerate that kind of outage for, was about 3-4 hours or something.
So,
Um,
so the customers that you have, what kind of responses are you getting? What type of feedback are you hearing when there's outages like this? I mean, I can only imagine if I was your customer, I'd be pretty irate. There'd be lots of foul language, adult language, rated R. Lots of verbal abuse would be coming on the other end for me. Do you hear that on your side? I mean, there are a lot of complaints, concerns, because I would not be happy if I had a 3-hour outage, or I had an hour outage. I would not be happy.
Well, naturally the customers are not happy, but they at some point choose to go in the cloud, and this is one of the dependencies they introduced with going to the cloud. So the workaround at that moment was there were some clients who were still logged on, and at that point things stayed working, so don't log out because Azure is down. And customers, customers using hybrid were also not very affected because they could choose to disable the AFS stuff and found a way to work around it and work from a premises environment. Yeah, but going all in the cloud is, yeah, introducing these kind of risks.
So do you find that the customers that go to the cloud, it's part of the cloud, and it's an understanding that, hey, it's what I signed up for. Do you think they reside to the fact that it's what I signed up for, so I got to suck it up, put on big girl pants, and deal with it?
Not in those kind of words, but.
Oh, come on, you know, Michel. we got to put big girl pants on and realize, hey, I signed that, you know, I signed that agreement with Microsoft. I have an E4 or, you know, E3 agreement, so I just got to suck it up, deal with it, and understand that I have my 6-hour outage when Microsoft needs to put an update out there or they have a DNS issue.
Yeah, they can tolerate in some way that the system goes down, because that's what they also sometimes had when the stuff was still running on-prem, but then they had a desk to stand next to and yell at the guy, fix it. But now...
Girl, don't, hey, not just a guy, it could be a girl too.
Or undetermined. But
yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, that's awesome.
That's just it. They can yell at the person.
The person.
But I'm sorry. I just think that I don't think it matters. If you made the recommendation to move to Office 365, knowing that they have a 99.9 whatever percent uptime SLA, I think you're still going to be the person yelled at.
Oh yeah, you always are.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not yelled at.
But you can't fix it anymore.
No, you can't. You're going to be that go-to person.
But you have to call Microsoft.
Yes. Your director, your CIO is going to come to you and say what's wrong, and you're going to say it's not my problem. It's not our problem. It's Microsoft, and they're going to go, okay, you still fix it, or you call Microsoft. I want it fixed. I don't give a shit. You're still the go-to person, regardless if it's on-prem or in the cloud. I see it every day. Regardless of where it's located, your CIO still wants you to fix it.
Absolutely.
Well, there's
Yeah.
always the plan to back out.
Do you see that happening? I mean, does it happen a lot?
We had a few, not
Really?
very often, yeah. But it was more or less because of performance reasons in VDI environments.
So are you seeing that more still today? I know years ago I sat on a vendor panel at Dev Connections. That was, I think, 3 years ago. And there were customers that were moving out of the cloud at that time just because there was still a lot of work to be done in the Microsoft offering. Are you seeing that still today, where people are backing out?
Occasionally, not many.
Okay.
But yeah, it's something which you don't see on their Twitter feeds or their Facebook pages. So it's not very known, but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And for all
Yeah.
the right reasons. Not necessarily things like outages and stuff, but more like performance, or they have business reasons to move on-prem again, or
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm just glad to hear that it doesn't happen often. Like when I came away from that panel a few years back, I felt like there was a pretty high percentage in the room. Like I think there were probably about 10 to 15 companies represented there, and two or three of them said they had backed out. That to me is pretty high when you're only talking, 15 companies. So
I can't predict
I think it's improved.
I can't predict the future, but I don't know what happens in Europe because that Azure AD mostly affected Europe. I think it was the December the 2nd, and today the portal was unreachable. And the portal is the thing you consult when there's issues, so
Yeah.
it's sort of chicken egg problem.
Yeah.
But that AD thing was serious, so it affected all tenants. So.
Yeah.
It shouldn't happen a
On a
lot
more
because it may change people's minds on reliability of the cloud in general.
Yeah. On a more positive note, I read something recently about Azure, the Azure offering in Germany, the offering being more isolated and protective of the data. I thought that was pretty interesting and a step in the right direction when you talk about putting your data in the cloud. I feel like there need to be some rules and regulations around that. I don't feel like if I, as a U.S. customer, should have data in another country. So I feel like that whole Azure move was a good one for what they're doing in Germany.
Yeah, and they only created specific, as far as I know, for that purpose, because Germany has specific regulations on the cloud data storage, and Microsoft dealt with that in this nice way. So.
Yeah.
No end of discussion, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't have any more questions. Phoummala, do you have anything else? Are we?
I think I think it's good because I feel bad for Michelle. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning for you now.
Yeah.
I keep looking at the time and go, oh my gosh, poor guy.
And it doesn't sound like he went to bed.
I know. It's like a late night on Bourbon Street in New Orleans.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I feel so bad that he got up so early for us. We absolutely appreciate it, though. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining us. Yeah, we don't want to keep you any longer. You can get to bed and crawl back. I know. He's like, thank you, they're letting me go. These two women had me up all night.
Thank you so much.
These American women kept me up all night. Phrasing.
That's funny.
Yeah, thank you again. We absolutely appreciate it. I don't think we have anything else. And I think we have one more show before 2016. Wow.
Yeah.
It's a little crazy. I think it's going to be 2016 in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
What will 2016 bring?
More cloud. That's what it's going to bring.
Probably.
It's going to be very cloudy in 2016.
As long as it's not raining or snowing with that cloud, we're good.
I'm sure there's going to be lots of rain and snow. Lots of clouds. Yes, I predict it's going to be a cloudy year next year. So everybody, thank you for joining us, and we will be back again next week for another episode of Current Status. And if we don't see you, have a happy holidays, everybody. And thanks again, Michelle, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.